Hi there, my name is Bruce Rain and welcome to episode 13 of Startup Disc is Full. As usual, I am joined by Jay and by Dana. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello.
It's been a little while since we've done an episode, but we'll try and make up for it with this one. Actually, we won't try that hard. But in this, we are going to be talking about repurposing old hardware. So you've got an old computer, it's outlived its usefulness. You've now bought a new computer and you've got that old computer sitting there. You don't necessarily want to throw it away because it was a significant investment at the time. And it's like, what can I do with this? Can I do anything with this computer that will actually be of use? And we're going to talk about some of the things you potentially can do with it. So who here has a computer sitting around doing nothing that they actually want to try and find something to do with?
I don't keep any of my old computers around. I toss them out straight away. So much space in this house.
I just showed one over there.
There is, look, I am guilty of keeping all the computers that I have. And then for a little while there, I started just accumulating Mac Minis. People were just giving them to me. I actually have 3 2012 Mac Minis and a 2014. So yeah, plenty of candidates out there for doing something with.
Actually, I can't scoff because I have 2 sitting over there. I have a 2011 and a 2012. But every time I go on Marketplace, because I'm like, I could use a little mini for this, I could use a mini for that. Everybody's wanting like $200-$300 for the freaking 2014 models. It's like, I don't want that one. That's the worst of them all.
Yeah,
I'm still looking for a 2018 to dip under $500. It's stupid.
Well, the 2014 is a funny one because that was, again, we'll be getting a little bit Mac focused here, but that was at a time when Apple, sort of brought out this absolutely ridiculous computer. I guess it was all about entry level, being able to buy a computer for cheap,
soldered in.
But I've actually got one here that we can point at and laugh at. This is a 2014 Mac Mini, and the reason why I have this is because it was being sold on eBay as a 2012, and it wasn't working. And I bought it and I paid next to nothing for it. Then when I got it home, I realized it was actually a 2014. I repaired it. I could have, sent it back to the seller and complained about them having the wrong year on it and told them to shove it up their ass. But I didn't end up doing that. I just repaired it because it was so cheap. I just decided to keep it. And I ended up using this as a web server for a little while. But this has 4 gigabytes of soldered on RAM. So that's it. Yeah. No more.
Useless.
And it's got an old i5 CPU in it. So other than it having a nice little footprint and low power consumption, it is a piece of poo. So
you can play music with it.
Yes. But having said that, it is something that you could repurpose. You could take something as useless as that Mac Mini and you can actually repurpose that into a whole range of things as long as you correctly choose for it the right sort of thing to suit that hardware. And some of the things that I guess we're going to be talking about here are things like setting up a media server, or like a backup server, running security cameras. Those are the sorts of things that we would be talking about. And I guess probably where we might start is what we ourselves have done, and then we can talk about some other options. So starting with you, Dana, have you got any repurposed hardware there doing a little task at your place?
Yes. I've got, so there's the Mac Pro over here. Mm-hmm. Right there. And it, up until recently, has been like a file server. It's been a music server. It's been a Plex server. Now I'm going to repurpose it as a, what was it called? FreeNAS. Mm-hmm. Is that the software, FreeNAS? That what Steve uses. And I'm actually going to put Linux on it. So. And then I think Plex will run on that as well. So,
that's a Mac Pro 5.1, I assume.
Yes.
So that's what
and
is it?
Huh?
How many CPUs? How many cores in that one?
12.
So dual hex core. So yes. it's and I imagine it's loaded up with RAM as well. So that
yes,
I would imagine you'd be able to use a few multiple purposes on the same piece of hardware.
And I have this down here.
Oh, okay.
So this is an eSATA based enclosure, and it has 4 drive bays in it, and that's going to be my storage.
Okay, so you're gonna, how are you going to connect that to the Mac?
I have an eSATA card.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Excellent. Nice.
And then
nice.
that's the 5.1, and then I have this guy. Ooh,
Oh, yes.
There's a reflection. Here, I'll turn around. It's more interesting on this side.
Yeah.
Ooh. So
Can't innovate my ass.
that is going to drive that mess over there, the laser engraver.
Yep.
And it's running Monterey at the moment.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I haven't decided if I'm going to put. Well, I just read the other day that there is no Linux application for that stuff, so it's either Mac or Windows. So it's probably just going to stay Monterey.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So those are 2 examples that I have here right offhand.
How about you, Jay?
I don't have a lot of older hardware currently in use for such projects, but I have plans.
And schemes.
It's not really repurposing, but the current computer I'm on is 14 years old. It's starting to show its age, but it runs by media server, security camera, DVR, or NVR. File storage, it does a lot. And I have a similar computer, which is also a 2012 Mac Pro that I set up in the basement, and I loaded it with pfSense firewall software, free to use. And that's running the firewall and all the networking and all that stuff for the entire house. VPN, it runs a bunch of stuff. It's way overkill, but it's all I had.
No, your giant cluster of X servers would have been overkill.
Slightly, yeah.
And I guess that's an important point, is that yes, it's nice to be able to repurpose this old hardware, but things like what we've talked about here, like the old Mac Pros, they're fairly power hungry. I mean, how do you feel about them running potentially 24/7? I mean, is that a practical thing to do?
No, not at all.
This one's run 24/7 since I bought it in 2013, something like that.
Yeah, I hate my life every time my power bill is due, but it's still cheaper than buying a new computer in February 2026 at the time of recording. So
yeah. I mean, I also have a Mac Pro because we're part of the Mac Pro crowd. And on this one, I'm running some software called Security Spy, which is the security camera. What do we call them? NVR, and that one. So this one is looking after sort of all of my security cameras, and it's also looking after my Plex server. Now, we've mentioned Plex for anyone who's watching this and is like, "What the hell is a Plex?" Plex is a sort of media server application that you can download for free, install it on a computer, and then you can basically designate a folder on a hard drive to be where all the data is stored, and you can store television shows and you can store movies, and what's great about it is when you get a television show or a movie or whatever, and you drop it in there, it immediately scans it. And as long as you've got the naming convention done correctly, it will bring all of the information about that movie to your server. So things like the year it was released, who's in it, what actors are in it. It'll put some cover artwork on there, the runtime. It also knows, like if you're watching a TV series, the intro. So you'll have a skip intro button where you can, skip over the intro for the show. So, it becomes it's not just a matter of having a folder full of movies. When you launch the Plex application, you see all of your movies with all the lovely cover art, and you can put them into viewing lists and all that sort of stuff. So it's a very, very handy thing. There is a paid version. The paid version gives you some extra access, but if all you're wanting to do is use it for your home, just having the server there and then having a bunch of clients to watch your videos from, that's all basically free.
Yeah.
and there are client applications available for all good computers
Everything.
out there. So anything you want to watch your movies, you can watch your movies on your phone, your tablet, your computer, sort of your laptop. You can watch them on your Apple TV. You can watch them on whatever the Android alternative is. You can watch it on smart TVs and stuff like that. You can download Plex and watch your movies. So it's a really, really handy thing, in particular if you're someone who might have a whole bunch of old DVDs or Blu-rays and you want to digitize them all onto a library that you can just access nice and quick and easy, which is exactly what I have done.
And the best part, if I may, that laughable excuse of a Mac Mini you just held up,
yes,
would actually make a great Plex server. You don't need killer hardware unless you start messing with hardware transcoding and all
multiple
that stuff.
users.
Yeah, if you leave all that stuff off, all you need is an i3 CPU. It doesn't matter what platform it is, 4 gigs of RAM, and storage to put your stuff on. And preferably Ethernet port, so you're not doing it all over Wi-Fi. But
yes, that's
it doesn't
right.
take much.
Well, see, the 2014, one of the advantages it has is it has gigabit Ethernet, and it has USB 3. So, where did my phone? It has USB 3. So it means if you're putting external storage on, if you want to put a great big NAS hard drive on the outside of it, then you're going to have decent speed. That doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
No.
I'm not going to do the next one.
Here, we get some. Yeah,
Mine never work.
Ooh,
He's going,
look at
yeah,
Look at that.
So
There are alternatives to Plex. Jellyfin or Jellyfish, I don't know what it's called, but if you do a Google search for Plex alternatives, there are, I think, 2 or 3 major alternatives available that might be better for you, whatever you decide to set up.
Jellyfin, MB is another one, and Navidrome. We'll put links to all of these in the description.
Yeah.
I went with Plex because it was recommended to me, I think, by Jay. And to be honest, when I first installed it and it just immediately started taking these video files and getting all of the cover art and getting all the information, getting the synopsis and getting the cast and all that sort of stuff with little pictures of the cast, I saw that and I was just like, this is the best thing ever. It feels like you've kind of created your own streaming service, your own streaming channel sort of thing. That's the kind of feeling you get from it. And there may well have been other ones out there, but I was so dazzled by Plex when I first used it. I just thought, this will do. And I have since paid for it. I think it was a one-off payment that just gives me some extra options and stuff. But
I got the lifetime account on a Black Friday, cost next to nothing, and it's lifetime. So
wait. You paid for something?
Shh. Don't tell anyone.
I am aghast.
Typically, when I pay for something, it blows up in my face, but Plex has not let me down.
And actually, this is actually really an important point because a lot of the stuff that we are going to be talking about on this show today is either very, very inexpensive or free. Because with a lot of these things that we are going to be talking about, there are often communities behind them, and there are people, driven to, sort of to provide these sorts of things for free, and they're often, they're pitched as an alternative to a paid application out there.
Right, and let's be honest, if you're using old tech to do something like this, you don't want to pay for
no, that's exactly right.
Otherwise, you'd buy a new computer for it.
Yeah, I mean, when I'll just quickly mention, what I have. As I say, I've got this Mac Pro here, which is running Plex server and the security system on it. I use it for a couple of other things as well. But, to be honest, the CPU barely ticks over when doing these sorts of things. And then behind me, I have 2 iMacs. They're both 2012 iMacs. And I'll talk about why that model is actually a really, really good old piece of hardware that you can repurpose. But I've got both of them running web servers, and I'm using some software called ISPConfig. If anyone out there has ever done any web server type stuff, if anyone's set up a website somewhere, they may be familiar with cPanel. There's a company that make this software called cPanel, and then it works. You've got the higher administration tier called WHM or Web Host Manager. And the idea of that is that you can get a VPS somewhere. You can install Linux on it, and then you can install cPanel, and it becomes a tool for turning that VPS into a multiple client system. So rather than just having a website running on it, because websites are they're not particularly resource hungry, rather than just having a single website running on that server, you put on something like cPanel or Web Host Manager, and you can go in and you can create multiple clients. And then from those clients, they can then set up multiple websites. So you might have 5, 10 clients on the same VPS, and each client might have 10, 15 websites of their own. So you have all of these different websites, but you have this management system so that these individual clients have access to their websites on that server. It's a very handy piece of software, but the problem with it is quite expensive and has gradually got more expensive, in particular when it's become one of the real market leaders of sort of
Why are you doing it?
And one day I
have to turn it on. macOS is like, here, let me help you. You look like a dumbass. Here we go.
Yeah, okay, there we go. Okay, this is in response to it being expensive, yeah. And so
still not doing it.
Still not working.
It's hit or miss. Yeah.
So anyhow, one day I was looking. I just did a bit of a Google search, and I was like, free alternatives or cheap alternatives to cPanel. Oh, look at that.
Oops.
Yeah, make a little heart.
We're not distracted at all.
No,
we're
not
on
at all.
Point.
And so this thing basically turned up. It said ISPConfig is a free alternative to cPanel, and that's what I run on these. And so this isn't just like one website. This is software that's designed so that you can have multiple websites running on the same server. So I've got 2 web servers here, both running ISPConfig, and then on another one I've got Nextcloud running, which I'll talk about in a moment. So
a little bit.
So we've got the idea of, with the Plex server, but then, of course, another thing, and we've also talked about the idea of having a NAS, and there is free software available out there that will allow you to set up a NAS. I mean, when you look at most NAS out there, even the ones off the shelf these days, it's basically just a little computer inside with some software running and then a bunch of hard drives attached to it.
It's a mini Mac Pro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's all what we're talking about doing is just having an old computer with some very purpose-specific software running on it, attaching a bunch of hard drives to it, and then you've got yourself a NAS. And some of those NASs then have automated cloud backup services built in and all that sort of stuff. So,
and some of these things run their own specific operating system. Like I believe TrueNAS is not an app; it's an actual OS. And whether you use a Mac or a PC, they can typically install Linux or something other than Windows or Mac OS. So you can just wipe your old hardware, reinstall, like pfSense, the Firewall is its own OS. It runs on a Mac or a PC because it just replaces the operating system. Yeah. So you're not locked into just Mac, just Windows, just Linux. You can switch them around.
Yeah, yeah.
It all takes Intel.
Yeah, there's probably a good juncture to talk about another thing called Docker. I don't know if you've ever heard of Docker, but Docker gives you the ability to run. It's almost like having a VPS on your computer. Okay, so you have your computer and you have a separate VPS on that computer with an operating system that you're running. It's almost like doing that, except you're not actually setting up a completely separated operating system. You're creating a separate environment. So let's say you have something that runs on LAMP, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, the LAMP stack, which is very, very common for a lot of this stuff and on Linux operating systems. You can create a Docker that will just hold one specific PHP environment, database environment, and it doesn't interfere with any other ones. So if you were wanting to run multiple services on a computer, you can just set them up in their own little Dockers. So it's something definitely worth investigating if you're going to do some multi-purpose stuff on the same computer. And as I say, with so many of these things, they're just not heavy on resources, so you can run multiple on there. But so yeah, TrueNAS is obviously one that you mentioned there. There's another one called Unraid, Borg Backup, and Restic. Again, we'll have links for these in the description. But
And
this doesn't necessarily have to be at your house. I mean, it can be if you want to. For example, if you set up a TrueNAS or one of the other systems, typically it has Plex as an app for that OS. So you can store all your movies and videos on that TrueNAS and have it be a Plex server at the same time.
Yeah.
What I did for years, I had an old Mac Pro. I loaded it up with hard drives when I could still afford hard drives. And I sent it to my buddy in New York. And it was an offsite server. I had a VPN there. Every week I would make backups to there, just in case a tornado hit my house. All my stuff would be safe in New York. So you can use it as an offsite backup as well. If you have a company, you can put it in your office or at your in-laws' house, whatever. As long as it's not at your house, it's an offsite backup.
There is a built-in Linux tool called rsync, and it's a synchronization tool. So it basically makes sure that two drives look exactly the same. And as I say, it's built into the Linux, certainly in the Ubuntu system. I don't know if it's necessarily in all of the different versions out there, but because that software is just there, it's built into it. The idea of getting a computer, a little computer, running an operating system with a big hard drive attached, and as you say, connecting it at your mother's house or a friend's house or something like that, and then making that a network mount on your local computer, and then using a tool like rsync to just on a schedule just synchronize this drive to that drive. It is a really inexpensive way to set up your own offsite backup, because if you're looking at doing offsite backups with sort of some of the tools that are available these days, they can actually work out to be quite expensive. I am currently using Backblaze, and when I get hit with that annual bill, it hits hard.
It's a big pill to swallow, yeah.
It is. But having said that, I have actually priced some other cloud backup options, and what I have with Backblaze is actually cheaper. So cheaper than me to say just go in and buy a bit of space on someone's server, whoever, just buy a chunk of space and then just copy data to it. Backblaze is cheaper. Backblaze have a pricing structure where there's no limit to the data as long as it's a local hard drives. It won't back up network drives, but as long as it's backing up local drives, there's no limit to how much space. And of course, most people are probably using a relatively small amount of space. I'm using ridiculous amounts of space, but that's just the way their pricing model works. It's a kind of a sharing type situation. If I was to try and back up the same amount of stuff with another service, it would cost me a packet. It probably cost me like hundreds per month, which I'm not going to do. But yeah, making your own offsite backup from an old spare computer, as long as you make sure that you're not going to send their internet bills through the roof. Make sure they've got wherever you're setting it up, they've got unlimited internet. So unlimited data.
Well, that's ultimately their problem.
They'll throw your computer out the window. They'll get their next internet bill and just chuck your computer out the window.
Yeah. By the way, if circling back to the whole firewall thing, if you're thinking, I don't want a firewall, it's too much. My current firewall built into my modem or router is good enough. You can also set up an ad blocking service. I mean, find me one person that likes ads. You can set up an ad blocker called Pi-hole. You can set it up on a Raspberry Pi, an old Mac, an old PC. Doesn't matter. It'll run it. And it sits on your local network, and it just intercepts all the ads. And it's beautiful.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be as complex as a firewall, even though firewall will also block ads for you. But if you don't need something that complex, Pi-hole is a great solution for it.
And of course, if you're someone who is not running any sort of firewall at all, stop it.
Get off the internet.
Yeah, that's right. All you have to do, if you've ever got any doubt about this stuff, all you have to do is if you have a firewall, have a look at how many attempts are made to access on a daily basis.
Do it on a Friday because you're not going to sleep for a while after you see that.
Okay, so we've looked at the idea of sort of an offsite backup security, backup server. I've obviously talked about the fact that I've got one here running as a web server, and again, one of the things you have to remember is that when you set up a web server with someone else, uptime, backups, all that sort of stuff, it's their problem. If you decide you want to take this on your own little server, it then becomes your problem. So you have to consider those sorts of things. It's very, very convenient and cheap to have your own web server, as I have here. But I don't necessarily use that for the websites where there is that real dependency on uptime. I use them for stuff here, which is a little less of the priority. I have a few staging servers on here, so if I need to send a link to a client to say, hey, have a look at this website before I publish it, I can do that. But if I don't have a UPS here, an uninterruptible power supply, so when if I happen to turn on too many air conditioners at once and I trip the circuit breaker, my website goes down for a little while as well. So, but it is, if that's what you're after, if that sort of reliability and uptime is not as important, and if you've got sort of a backup plan. See, I have these servers here; they back up onto a NAS that I have connected in the house as well. I don't have any offsite for those ones, but it doesn't particularly matter for what I'm doing on those. There's no data there that it's like that crucial if it gets lost.
Yeah. And what if someone's watching? By the way, we might be going through this list of stuff pretty quick, but we're just here to give ideas. If you want to look into it further, there's going to be links in the description, all that. But someone is watching this because they love to see our faces. I can't blame them. They're watching this saying, listen, I don't want to do any of that stuff. I just want to enjoy my old computer. Can I just run an older operating system and enjoy old games? Is that fine? Is that approved by you guys?
Absolutely. And not just approved. I mean, I have that, I mean, a lot of the games that I play are actually much older than that. So have much older hardware for that sort of thing. But absolutely. And of course, this is where
Bruce's games are in black and white.
Yes, that's right. They're silent games.
Little cutscenes of the text.
I shouldn't laugh, actually. I mean, they did that on bloody, was it Karateka, I think. They used to smash up the text of the story all the time. That was
Apple II games, Prince of Persia.
Yeah. And that's probably where we should also talk about a product called RetroArch. It's Retro ARCH, Arch being short for architecture, and this is software that you can either run on an existing operating system, or there is actually a dedicated RetroArch operating system you can install, so it does nothing but RetroArch, and it is a game emulator. It will emulate old arcade games like MAME. It will emulate old Nintendo was it 64 games. It can emulate PlayStation 1 games, and depending on the hardware, if you've got really old hardware with pretty crappy graphics, you may not necessarily be able to emulate all of those machines, but you certainly be able to emulate some. And of course, if we're talking about something like a little Mac Mini, a little thing like that, you could have that just set up under your television set with the HDMI connected up to your computer. You can get some remote game consoles. You can just turn that into a little dedicated gaming system and sit there in front of your TV playing old arcade games if that's your thing. And I had been meaning to actually set one of those up, but I ran out of time. But I think that's a wonderful use of an old computer. This is the thing, and it's exactly what Jay said before. What I guess the aim of this is to try and inspire people to actually go in and give this stuff a try. I'll talk about some of the pitfalls with this stuff in a moment, because there are a few things you need to keep in mind with that. But if you end up watching this and then you go and grab an old computer and start installing some of these things on there, then we'll be very happy. So a couple of other things I'll just sort of mention that you can have on them. You can have things like an email server. I talked about a web server, but if you wanted to set up your own email server, I don't recommend it, but you can. A GitHub server. So if you're, doing a lot of, development or, whatever, and rather than using sort of the actual Git, the main one, you can actually set up your own. You can, I'm not sure about a distributed computing node. Who mentioned that?
You did.
Did I?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I used to do that. This is only going to take a minute. I had a PowerMac G3. I think it was 400 megahertz, and I was running SETI at home because it looked awesome on my screen. I felt important, like I was doing something. I never found an alien, but it was cool.
Yeah,
I read an article about that lately. They said there was something like 100 million. God, I can't remember what the storage amount was. Like how much data they had been sifting through over the last 10 years since they shut that program down, and they finally got through it. And they out of all the hundreds of millions of possible signatures, they narrowed it down to 100. And then of that, there are 10 that are like really, really interesting. So
yeah,
they've gone through it, but it took them part of 2 decades.
Hey, this guy.
Well, to give you an idea of how long that has been going for, I remember running that on my G5 when I bought that new in 2003. So we were
running it on 68K Max back in the late 90s.
Yeah, well, because I remember it was one of when you'd get the piece of data and you would process it, would take a certain amount of time, and of course it'd stop and start, whatever, but it would tell you how long it took to do that. And then you had the ability to go onto the SETI website and have a look at how many people were doing, how many each individuals were doing, and you could join a group, and within your group, how many of these little bits of data you were processing. And I remember having done it before with whatever I was using before, which was probably a G3, maybe a G4, and then getting the G5 and then running SETI at home and just being blown away with how fast it was doing one of their little pieces of data, and then in the little group of people that I was part of a little team, and my one was right at the top because I was getting through so many more than everyone else was.
Everybody was like, "Oh, that bastard got a G5."
Bloody G5. And there's that, and of course another really important one which you haven't mentioned yet is the smart home hub type idea. The idea of actually having this sort of having your old computer controlling your lights. And again, we're talking about stuff here. It's just not particularly CPU intensive.
Right.
Again, those are the sorts of things where I would say you'd be better off with probably a smaller computer that's not going to go through big power consumption. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely something you can do. I'm just having a look here at some smart home. You've got Home Assistant and Open HAB is a couple of the ones that we've got here. Again, we'll put links in there. And look, another thing you could do if you wanted to set up your own weather station, you go out and you get a whole bunch of sensors out there. What do they call them, hygrometer or whatever? The sort of humidity, the temperature, whatever, and you have those all connected to USB to a computer, and then you get a computer that's going to take all that data in and turn it into a bit of a a weather station. That's another cute idea as well.
Yeah, and if they don't make software for your specific operating system, again, think outside the box. Forget about your operating system. If they don't make it for Mac or Windows, they might have. It might have its own operating system in Linux. Just do a search online, you'll probably find it.
This again is something probably worth mentioning because there are a lot more of these open source free tools available on the Linux platform than in any other platform. So if your computer is an old Mac OS computer or Windows computer, and you may have to abandon that operating system and go with, Linux. I mean, I tend to use Ubuntu. There are 2 different types of Ubuntu that you can install two primary types. One is the server and one is the graphic user interface. So with the server, when you install that, it's an operating system, but there's no desktop, there's no menus, there's no trash can. It is basically just text-based, and you access it via SSH, via a network, or on the computer itself. You can have it set up with no screen, and you do all of the stuff from a terminal command line. Now, that doesn't suit everyone.
That's hardcore.
Yeah, but some of these tools that we're talking about, that's the only way you can install them. There are some tools to make it a little bit easier, things like Homebrew. Once you have Homebrew installed, it's much easier to then install other applications on there, because you can just basically type brew and the name of the application, and it'll just go ahead and install it. There are a few other things where it's it's reasonably easy. But I do have a tip for people who are potentially new to Linux and maybe wanting to install something on there. ChatGPT is your friend. If you fire up ChatGPT and you say, I have just installed Ubuntu on this Mac or whatever, or I want to install Ubuntu on this Mac, talk me through it. Or I want to install whatever software on this, talk me through the steps. And it will literally give you, do a step, post the output, do a step, post the output, and it will just walk you through it. And if you get stuck somewhere along the line, it will help you diagnose the problem. And so if you are branching into areas of tech that you don't necessarily understand, I highly recommend using an AI tool like ChatGPT to, walk you through the process. And it'll just output lines of code. You can just copy them and paste them. If you've got your SSH terminal up on the screen, you connect it to the server, just copy, you paste it. Again, if you get stuck, you just paste the output, say this is what it's giving me an error, and it'll go, oh, okay, that's because of this, and then it'll give you something else to try instead.
Yeah. Eventually you'll get there, but small disclaimer, ChatGPT or any AI is not my friend. Bruce is my friend. So when I'm done fucking around with AI that keeps giving me the wrong commands, I'm like, Bruce, fucking help me out. I'm about to toss this thing out the window.
But, look, there are a few things that I have done that I simply would not have taken on by myself. I did need ChatGPT to help them get set up. And one example is I set up a thing called Nextcloud on one of my servers. Now, for anyone who's familiar with cloud data services, things like the Google Drive, Dropbox, there's that one Microsoft make, but we don't care about that. And these are very handy tools. You can just set them up so that they synchronize to your own computer. You have a little directory on your computer, and anything you copy there just automatically ends up in that cloud. You can then put something in that cloud and you can share it with people. So if you need to share a big file with someone, you can just send them a link. They can click on that link and then download the file that's sitting on your Dropbox or whatever you happen to be using. Now, these are great, but of course there's a limited amount of space that you have with them. If you go beyond that space, you've got to pay for it. They are basically living on the clouds of these services. If you don't particularly want to have your data on these people's clouds, Nextcloud allows you to make your own cloud system, cloud drive. So you set it up in the instance of mine. I've set it up on Ubuntu. I've got it running in a Docker. I talked about this before, and the reason why I have it running in a Docker is because I already have ISPConfig running on this same server. I didn't want those two things interfering with each other. So by having Nextcloud in a Docker, I avoid that. And it gives me the ability to just have my own cloud drive. Now, of course, then it becomes my responsibility to make sure that is backed up, it's secure, all that sort of stuff. But it's a very, very handy thing. And it comes with some software that allows you to do the same synchronization. So I can set it up so that any file that I drop onto my computer into a particular directory, it just automatically gets synchronized to my Nextcloud. And I tell you what, when you're running your own cloud service, the speed is amazing. You just copy a file and then it's there. So it's a very, very handy tool, but there are also other things that work with it. There's a Nextcloud chat, so you can run your own chat server if you want. So you can actually have friends chatting away, and they're all chatting on your chat server. there is that also has video conferencing built into it, so you can have your own video conferencing server rather than using someone else's. You can install.
Wait a second. So why are we using this right now?
I've never tried the video conferencing.
Okay.
Maybe try that for another time.
Right.
But
because this was free and so easy to set up.
Yes, that's right.
Right. It only took an hour.
Yeah. And then another thing I installed on my Nextcloud was some software called OnlyOffice, and it is basically a cloud-based version of essentially like Microsoft Office. So it has, sort of like a Word equivalent, it has an Excel equivalent, and it has a PowerPoint equivalent. And it's collaborative, so you can go in there, you can create a file, I can share that with someone else, they can be making changes to exactly the same file that I'm making at exactly the same time, as is the case with a lot of collaborative software. But this is something that is all free. So setting all of this up, apart from the time it took me to install it, was all free. And so, yeah, that was, that's a very, very handy tool, and I, highly recommend Nextcloud if people want to go down that path. But although I will probably make a video on installing it, it is something that I would not have taken on without ChatGPT helping me with that.
So this is all. This is great. And again, I'm not me. I'm someone watching this video. Like 40 minutes are gone. I don't have any old computers, but I got totes full of phones and iPads and whatever tablets they make that are not Apple. What can I do with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got a few different things here that you could do potentially with old phones. You can turn them into a dedicated MP3 player. Maybe set them up with some speakers and, do something along those lines. You can, what we have to remember is even an old phone that might be, doesn't stack up compared to the technology we have today. They often still have pretty decent cameras in them, and they've got connection to Wi-Fi. You may not have a SIM card in, so you may not necessarily be able to make calls with them. But
right.
they've got web browsers in them. You can install apps on them. They've got cameras. They've got Wi-Fi. So you could, be using an old phone as a baby monitor or something like that. There is one very handy use for an old phone, which I have done before, and this is for a very specific purpose. I wanted to film something, but my positioning to where I was filming was a long way away from what I was filming. I was all the way back over there, and they were all the way up there. But I was also trying to record their audio. And I didn't have any wireless mics or anything like that with me there. But what I was able to do is get an old phone, put it on the little voice memo thing, press the record button, leave that phone up the front near where all the people were talking, film from the back, and then I was able to merge those two together in some editing software, take the video from the camera I was holding in my hands, take the audio from the camera that was sitting up near the desk, and just splice them together and end up with audio that sounded nice and close, but with the camera being far away. And it's more than enough. You can use an old iPhone 4 for that. It doesn't have to be a fancy phone or anything like that. So another thing that you could use an old phone for is setting it up as a webcam. That's an option for there. If you've got
That's actually what I'm doing now. This is my iPhone as a webcam.
Is that your current one, or is it an old one?
For this episode, let's say it's an old one.
Perfect.
It's not the point, damn it.
You've got an old tablet. You can turn those into a digital photo frame. There's any number of things you can do with those. Any more that you can think of that you could do with an old phone? Yes.
Actually, one of my favorites,
You can
because
throw it in frustration.
years ago, someone said, "Have kids; it'll be great." It's not, because good luck finding your Apple TV remote. I found it in the fridge. I found it under the kitchen sink. I found that remote everywhere. And instead of wasting time looking for my remote, I could in the Apple ecosystem, it's easy. It's built into iPhone. You can use your phone as a remote for your Apple TV. But I know for Android, they make other solutions with kind of like a universal remote. and it'll act as a Bluetooth remote. And as long as your hardware supports it, you can use your phone as a remote. So an old phone, you just keep it by the couch, make sure your kid doesn't get his hands on it. You can have a remote control.
I guess the advantage you have with if you're using a phone, and in particular like with the Apple ones, is the old Find My thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if it is lost down behind a couch, you can actually make it ring and find it. So,
right.
Because I'm actually thinking about attaching an AirTag to my TV remote. I leave it in some of the stupidest places, and I can't blame anyone for that. That's me doing it. I just sometimes find the remote in the dumbest places. You know, I'll go change the channel or something like that, and I've got something else to do, and I'll just keep walking around with the remote with me, and then I'll just put it down somewhere and go and do something, and then that's where it stays.
I actually use just personal examples. I have an old iPad. I don't know what generation, but it's old enough to be useless. But I just have it on a stand, and it runs. It shows me all my security cameras. So I have the old computer running the security system, but the iPad mirrors the camera. So when I'm in the other office, I can see what's going on.
Yeah.
The screen is burnt in because it's been showing the same frame forever, but it's coming in handy.
I've actually got an old iPad set up in my kitchen on a stand, and I have some software. I have nothing else on it. I basically just have this software on there. It's called Recipe Keeper.
Yeah.
And it is sort of synchronized, so I can make a change. I can add a recipe or make a change to a recipe here, and it will change everywhere else. And the other beautiful thing about this Recipe Keeper software is you have the option to share a recipe. So if you press the share button, it'll actually create a URL on the Recipe Keeper website with your recipe and the picture and everything, and you can then send it to someone else. And I used that just recently when someone said, "Oh, that mushroom sauce you made the other day, can I have the recipe for it?" And I just sent them a link, and they can just access it from my from my little Recipe Keeper app. But having said that, I was mentioning Nextcloud before. One of the additional tools for Nextcloud is to set up a cloud recipe keeper. So I haven't done that yet. I'm still using this software called Recipe Keeper. But yeah, that's a great use for this old iPad. And this old iPad is slow even just to do basic browsing, but it runs this recipe software beautifully. So
yeah, if I try to pull up a YouTube video on that iPad, it'll liquefy. I'm not even going to try. But I know Dana is itching to jump in, but I have one more personal example. What the hell was that?
Cat.
Zoomies?
Yeah. No, trying to climb on things that shouldn't be climbed on.
I also have an iPad mini. I think it's the first or second gen. It's old as dirt. And I use that on my nightstand, and it just displays a clock. Very dim screen, just displays a clock. But it also has an app for Home Assistant that I have running on a Raspberry Pi. So if I'm in bed and I'm like, crap, did I lock the door? I could just open the Home Assistant app. I could do it from my phone, but the iPad is sitting right there and say, oh yeah, lock the door. And it'll lock it for me, turn off the lights, and do other stuff. So.
Oh, very handy. Okay, so now we've got a couple of other things, I suppose, when we talk about like really old hardware, like things like old CRT TVs or really old computers or something like that. I mean, I guess if you've got an old CRT TV and you're wanting to relive that true vintage gamer experience,
eye-watering.
Well, you know what's so funny? People say this quite a bit, but some of those old games, they were always made so that they would look good on a crappy old CRT TV.
They don't look right on LCD.
Yeah, that's right. When you watch them on an LCD where every pixel is perfect, they just don't get the same thing. They built them around the pixels kind of blending into each other, and you will actually get a better, visual experience using an old CRT TV on those things when compared to plugging them into a modern LCD screen. So
yeah, I was very excited to hook up my N64 to my current 65-inch TV. All excited to play GoldenEye. I couldn't see shit. No. It was horrible. I had to do an HDMI mod that had a filter on it to make it look like a CRT to make it somewhat doable. But yeah,
that's funny. Now, I also just want to mention one other thing here really quickly. If you are going to be running a computer as a server, headless, as they say, so no monitor attached, as I have like with my little servers here, should you ever decide you want to remote into them, either by VNC or if you're using like AnyDesk, I'm not going to mention that other one, sometimes those computers, if they don't have a monitor attached to them, they will default to like a really crappy resolution. So I actually have these little things here, which you can buy on eBay or wherever. And they're like a little ghost monitor dongle. So it's a little HDMI port there. And then when you plug that into the back of the computer thinks it's connected to a 1080p monitor. So it will automatically adjust its resolution to that. So if you then remote in, do a bit of remote control, as I say, with, sort of something like, BNC or AnyDesk. AnyDesk is basically software that you can just install on a computer and allow remote access. There's another one that's better known, which I'm not going to mention, but some people from that company went and set up this company called AnyDesk, and their pricing is far more reasonable. So if you are using that something viewer application, I would highly recommend you have a look at AnyDesk so that you're not getting, taken advantage of with pricing. So that is my recommendation to everyone. AnyDesk, check it out. Okay, so once again, we're not necessarily saying that this show is going to be all about specific instructions for installing things, but we would love for this to be a motivational thing for you. You might have a look. We've got a whole bunch of stuff in the description of this video. Go check them out, see if there's anything there that interests you. If you've got that old computer lying around, it might be an old iMac, or it might be an old Mac Mini, or, an old, those other ones, the PC ones, and it might just be sitting there, good hardware. As I say, keep in mind of whether it's fit for purpose. You want, it's very handy if you can have something that's expandable. You can stick a bit of extra RAM in it, or you can put a big hard drive on it for some of these purposes. But if you've got, some of this old hardware lying around, hopefully some of the stuff we've talked about today, might inspire you to go out and see what's available, try some of these things out, and make some good use of those old computers.
One other thing I want to throw in there. After you watch this video, you still have no idea what you can do with that old computer. If it's not too old, sell it or strip it for parts and sell the parts. And there might be good money in there, especially storage, NVMe drives, memory. You could get some good money for it at the moment. But, or gift it to a family member that might want to set up home automation or something. Just because it's old. And again, the computer I'm currently on is 14 years old. But I have 20-year-old computers that are still useful as well for specific things. So ask around, and if you can't sell it, don't just throw it away right away. I mean, it's up to you, of course, but you might be able to make someone else happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, I made mention before of the 2012 Mac Mini, and one of the reasons why I tend to favor this is because it has a version with a dual i7 CPU, so plenty of grunt there. It can be upgraded up to 16 gigabytes of RAM, which will be ample for a lot of the purposes we've described here. You can actually fit two 2.5-inch hard drives inside them, but even if you have only one in there, you've got USB 3, so you can connect it up to a whole bunch of external hard drives, whether they be SSD or mechanical drives. For a lot of these network purposes, mechanical drives are probably fine. And yeah, I'm just a big fan of that particular model. Very small footprint, very easy to tuck it away in a corner somewhere, and lots of different options you can use it for.
Yeah, and if you have a Mac Mini, specifically the one Bruce has, the i3 with 4 gigs of RAM, whatever it is,
it's an i5, yeah, that one.
Or a MacBook Air. Keep in mind the shape of these computers are perfect. If you're into clay pigeon shooting and stuff like that, you can just pull, blast them out of the sky. They're perfect for that, especially MacBook Airs.
I'm just actually having a look at some of these late 2012s that have sold on eBay here in Australia recently. And they vary in price from around about sort of $60 up to, well, here's one. This is Good luck to this person. A late 2012 quad-core i7 with a 1 terabyte hard drive and 8 gigabytes of RAM sold for $228.
Sold. Holy
Yeah.
crap. Well, we know everything is triple the price in Australia, but that's insane.
Yeah, that is crazy. Here's one. This same spec. This one here. This one's got 16 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte hard drive. This sold for $170.
That's acceptable.
That's US, from the US, so that's why that price is there. So if I
this
do
one
Australia,
I know I max it out at 16. I forget what the hard drive is in it. I didn't know you could put 2 of them in there. That's kind of cool.
yeah, it's not easy. It's a bit fiddly, and of course you need the plug because they don't all have the little cable for the second one.
Right.
And the server one, I think, has a sled in it, and you can put a 2.5-inch drive in there as well. From memory.
No sled, but it does have the knobs that you put in the drive to hold it in place.
Okay.
But even for those, if it didn't ship with 2 drives, you have to buy the drive cable, which I think is $6 from iFixit.
Yeah, okay. That's not too bad, is it?
Oh, one more thing that just came to mind. This is not particularly useful for people at home, but if you have a business, whatever. I haven't seen it done in a while, but people used to take iMacs, any iMac G4, iMac G3, the little ones or the big flat screen ones, and set it up in Windows to show company information, slideshows of, I've seen a lot of realtors do it. They just put old iMacs, load it up with a slideshow, put it in the window, and, use it for that.
So it's just designed, it's just you're utilizing the aesthetic of the old computer to draw people's eye to your little slideshow.
It worked. I looked every time.
Okay, so anything else that people want to mention with old computers and things?
A general disclaimer that if you're going to use old hardware with limited support software or maybe older software, in general, just be careful of connecting it to your network. You might want to set up a good firewall to shield older hardware and older software before you put it on your network. I mean, even if you don't do any banking on it, they can still be access points into your home to the rest of your network. So just be careful. And again, you can ask ChatGPT, how do I secure this operating system, or how do I do that? You'll get tips, but just a general tip.
Yeah. And I guess also, be aware that it is old hardware, and it might fail on you. An old computer might just die on you unexpectedly because it is old. Yeah,
don't be like me. Don't keep putting money in this server that keeps going down because it's just at the end of its rope. Don't do it.
And don't use a 2011 15-inch or 17-inch MacBook Pro for anything.
Yeah. It works today. It's not going to work tomorrow.
That's right.
No, I can't really think of anything else. I'm hoping that if we did forget something obvious, that we will find it in the comments. Someone else put it there.
We would very much like to hear about some of the other things that people have done with their old hardware, the repurposing they've potentially done, any ideas that we haven't actually thought of. I'm very interested to hear about it. And also the other really important thing, if you watch this and then do decide to pull out an old piece of hardware and have a little bit of a play with some software, please let us know. Just drop it into the comments. Let us know if this inspires you to go in and try something out, and what it is that you had a go at, and whether it's working well for you.
And like and subscribe.
Yeah. If you're really hardcore into, let's say you want to set up home automation or something, and it's not working. It's not working. You spend days with ChatGPT. You're pulling out your hair, whatever. You finally get it to work, and you want to share with other people how you did it. You can post the entire process on Tinker Different, for example. Just write a guide explaining to other people how to do it. Share it with the world. I'm sure people will appreciate that.
I made a video a while ago about a little machine that broadcasts old analog television signals. It doesn't broadcast them a very long distance, but it broadcasts old television signals. So if you've got any old TV hardware that doesn't have a digital interpreter, it only has the old analog whatever receiver. And so what I did, I got an old Mini with Plex on it. Just randomly playing movies from my Plex server, and then broadcasting them on this analog signal. So at any particular time, if I have an old TV lying around, I could just switch the TV on and it was just playing a movie. And it's very silly, it was very stupid, but it was lots of fun. But that was a dumb little task I did with one of my Mac Minis a while ago.
And I mean, I'm biased to older hardware, but even if you have a modern, let's say, and this could be a whole show on itself, but let's not get into that. If you have modern hardware, but you want to connect older hardware or software, use it on that. There's ways to do that too. For example, I have what's called a Radio Shark. It's basically a USB antenna, radio antenna for FM, AM radio. And I wanted to listen to radio on my Mac. Local AM, FM, not internet radio. Don't ask me why. I just wanted it. So the community had made a version of the controller app that works on modern Mac OS and stuff like that. So you can flip it too. Like, I don't have any old stuff, but I would like to, for nostalgia or experimenting, want to use some old stuff on my newer hardware. You can do that too. Just search, really. Search is your friend.
Yeah, look, the community is fantastic with this stuff. And again, this is one of the reasons why I do regularly find myself going down that Linux path, is because there are just so many of these amazing tools. Linux is so much more lightweight, so it will make an old computer feel new. I mean, that's something that we haven't even necessarily talked about, is the idea, and this is almost a discussion in itself, and that is getting an old laptop and turning it into a usable browsing computer. So you could get something like an old, I don't know, MacBook Air or something like that might be dog slow, or it may not run the latest operating system, so you might be worried about security, that side of things. You could get that. You can put the latest version of Ubuntu on it, or something else, Debian or Mint or whatever, and you can just get a Linux distribution and install it on that, and you'll be running the absolute latest with all the security updates and all of those things taken care of. And then if you just want to use that computer for a bit of browsing or doing a little bit of, just online stuff, as I say, I mean, with tools out there now, like, web tools for things like, Google Sheets and Google Docs and all that sort of stuff. You can actually do quite a lot of productive stuff on those just with an old computer running a web browser, and, get new life from old hardware, turn it into something useful. If you're just saying, I just want this for browsing and email and doing the social media and that sort of stuff.
And that goes back far. I mean, you can make a Power PC from the 90s useful with Linux. I don't think we can say anything more about it, or we'll get a copyright claim from Sean at Actually Retro. This is his domain. But it's definitely.
No, I think that happened the moment we said Linux.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he just set up on his couch like someone said it.
He's fired off. By the time this episode is over, he will have fired off several emails to his lawyers.
Yeah,
his highly paid lawyers.
He hasn't messaged us yet, so.
We might get in trouble for not inviting him on the show if we're talking about Linux. We'll be like, come on, guys.
We'll get him on the next one.
Yeah.
We did that already.
Yeah, we did. That was one of the very early shows that we actually did. For anyone wanting to check our back catalogue, we did an episode about the other operating system.
Because we've done so many.
Yes, that's right. This is episode 13. Can you believe it? Who would have thought we'd get to 13?
Yeah.
And the thing I remember so well from that episode is I set everyone up with a little project to install Linux on a computer and try and use it as your daily driver, and no one fucking did it.
I did it. I fucking hated it.
Okay, well, that is it for this show. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please feel free to give us a like. Get the little like. There we go. Give us a like and subscribe to the channel. tell your friends about it. Tell them how awesome it is, and do tell us about your own little projects if you've pulled out an old computer and decided to use it for a bit of repurposing. So thanks for watching. Thank you to you guys. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Dana, for joining us. Oh, fireworks! And we hope to see you at the next one, which hopefully won't be quite as big a gap as it was for this one and the last one.
I think a year and a half is perfectly acceptable.
We'll do better next time, I promise.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Hi there, Monet. Shh. I've forgotten everything. I'm happy to hand it over to you to mention a couple of these, because a lot of these ones would stick with the old phones and tablets, the stuff that you added. So
I don't use any of it.
Really?
Yeah.
This isn't louder?
No. You're definitely using the microphone is definitely on your camera, because when you were moving.
God damn it, Bruce.
That's why you show up early, so you can test your shit, Dana.
And then the iPhone 4 became the thing. I fucking knows why, but I'm not a millennial, so Okay. I really have no idea what I'm going to say.
Just write the fucker. We'll wait.
No, that's right. No, I'll figure it out.
Is Dana well hydrated?
Yeah, even though I'm going to sound like shit for the rest of the thing.
Okay, so one other thing that you could use an old phone for would be for a... Let me start that again. Okay, I'll stop talking. So as long as Dana doesn't stuff it up again, I think we should be fine.
Yeah.
What the fuck? I've just got this stupid, goofy smile now. I've got to stop that. Okay, so we'd like to thank everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please feel free to leave any comments in there. Tell us about this. No, that's fucking dumber. What sort of network cable are you buying?
I believe that's Cat 6E.
Should be making your own.
I tried that and none fucking worked.